You're listening to the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast, featuring real business owners telling real stories about their real business experiences. Here are your hosts, John Chiappetta and Eric Jorn.
All right, welcome back to the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast. Today on the show, we have Tom Jiaras from International House and Wine and Cheese. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Tom.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, welcome, Tom.
We also have another special guest, Clay Hamlin, managing partner of Kaizen CPAs. Welcome.
Cool.
Thank you very
First
much.
time on the show, too.
Yep. Looking forward to it.
All right. So, Tom, tell us your story. How did you get started, and what do you do?
So my primary business, International House of Wine and Cheese, my father bought it in 1976. So we've been in this location 46 years, which, independent businesses don't really last that long. So I consider it quite fortunate. We have a phenomenal location on Route 12, which is Rand Road, just 10 miles south of Lake Geneva. And I put a lot of our successes because of the location, but I think some of it's because of my business acumen over the years. When my dad bought the business in 1976, I was still in college, and he really wanted me to come into the business with him, and I had other offers, and I was trying to decide what to do. And while I was working there during the summertime, when I was off for my college years, I kind of got the itch about wine, and it became a passion. So I've been all over the world to wineries, and I'm gifted with a good palate, which helps dramatically in terms of developing long-term relationships with customers. But if you go back to 1980s, in the 80s, California was just becoming known as a premier wine growing region around the world. And it was very fun for me while I was going through my learning curve to have America learning at the same time. And life was way different back then. People didn't worry about drinking and driving, which I don't think is proper, but they didn't. And, it was kind of like party up and you'd be in bars till midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. America was having fun. Mm-hmm. And that changed dramatically over the years, probably for the good. But as Americans accepted wine, and wine became more than just a cocktail, but became a part of life, a part of, really when it comes down to it, wine is meant to be consumed with food. And when you start making that part of that acumen in your life, it's a very special thing.
That's awesome. There's definitely some passion in there.
Yeah, it unquestionably. And most of my friends, I am personal friends with Clay, a lot of what we do is around wine. So for me, it's a lifestyle for me.
Tom is the wine guy.
So how many different? I don't know. So how many different types of wine do you have in your shop?
We have.
And then how do you even keep it straight?
Well, we've got a perpetual inventory system, and you keep it straight that way. But really, what's made my success in today's world, if you talk about how businesses change and how you have to acclimate yourself to the environment as it changes, and if you go back to in the 80s, for instance, people didn't have SUVs. So I'm up in a resort area, and people would have very little room in their car, so they'd come and shop in my store and then load everything what they bought on the kids' laps in the back seat and everything like that. And then through the evolution of big box and SUVs, people now buy whenever they see something, they go and they shop and they bring it with them. So my business has evolved. Big box has for a while has depleted my customer counts, which is not unusual for a small business. And then the internet has done the same thing. So I'm approaching now 50% of my wine business is internet related, which is a great thing. So I've had the good fortune of being able to acclimate to the business environment and still have success, where a lot of businesses small businesses aren't able to do that, and they end up on the short end of the stick, which is unfortunate because, I've got 40 plus years of life and blood in those four walls and in that business. And so I wanted to continue to be successful.
Yeah, no doubt. So how did you make that evolution to, now you're at 50%, right? You started at 0%. Correct. Now you're at 50% of your customer base is buying online. That takes a radical evolution of a business.
It does. And so I, a while ago, created a niche. So if you go to most industries in America, there's been huge consolidation in the distribution side of things. Mm-hmm. And that's good and bad at the same time. For consumers, a lot of times it's not good because the amount of selections you have continues to be reduced. So, and for a retailer like myself, I said, okay, in the liquor and wine industry, I'm going to talk about that specifically. All of a sudden, where I had 40 distributors I was buying from, now I have 2 or 3 main ones, and they're huge. And I'm like, okay, these guys have too much to sell, and they need an outlet to sell it. But they need an outlet to sell it smart, because vendors, wineries, importers, they create a price point for an item in every state. Because you have to understand, in the liquor industry, every state's regulated differently. So the laws can be dramatically different. So Pennsylvania, for instance, is state controlled, and the state controls they control the pricing and everything in the entire state. Illinois doesn't. The other thing, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent here, but the other thing in the liquor industry is there's what's called a 3-tiered system. And this was set up in Prohibition. And it basically says that an importer or a winery, or a distiller for that matter, has to sell to a distributor in the state, who then sells to the retail store or the restaurant, who sells to the consumer. Mm-hmm. And it's by law. Interestingly enough, in the liquor industry, the state of Illinois protects the receivables of the liquor distributors. So you get 30-day terms, and if you haven't paid your bills within it ends up being about 35 days. There's a cutoff date, and the state puts you on a delinquent list, and you can't buy any spirit or any alcohol or anything from anybody.
Yep.
So, and there's no other industry. And I understand they do that because liquor distributors are tax collectors for the federal government. Cigarette industry is the same way. I mean, look at what the tax is on a carton of cigarettes. Mm-hmm. But they don't do that in that industry. So it's interesting that has survived and nobody's challenged it, like a big company like Costco or something like that. And Costco is the #1 wine retailer in the country in terms of the volume.
Wow.
So getting back to me, the distribution network, I went to these distributors and I'm like, okay, how can I fulfill their needs while also taking advantage of things to myself? So I started an email program. That was the initial step. And that grew to, I've got, between my various lists, well over 10,000 email names. And I would do emails that would, in the beginning, we didn't even have a website. They would just email in their order, and that was very time consuming and everything. So then I started with a public website where all the pricing populated to the internet. Distributors used to not pay attention to what's going on throughout e-commerce. Now they watch everything like a hawk. So the next step was to start creating password protected websites, invite people to be members in those websites, explain to them that the pricing that they were getting was proprietary pricing, and they weren't supposed to go anywhere and ask another retailer if they could get that pricing, or send it to friends and family members, because you're in a group of people and you're getting something special. And for lack of a better term, don't screw the pooch for everything. And so now I've got 6 websites, 5 of them are password protected, and my vendors love me because I have the ability to go and sell stuff when they need to make a number. And every month they have vendors and suppliers saying, you're behind on your numbers, we need to do something. Well, they'll come to me, and they won't go to Binny's or somebody else because they don't care about the price points. I do. Mm-hmm. So it's a partnership. So it's worked really well for me. But the other problem is most people, if you're located physically in Illinois, I have to worry about pricing over the whole country, and everything is priced differently in the different states. So I have to make that part of my business acumen when I make decisions on what I'm going to buy and whether I'm going to buy when they come with me. Sometimes they'll give me a price on 100 cases, sometimes 1,000 cases, sometimes 2,000 cases. And people that are a part of my email program really love it because they're getting a great deal. And they respect the fact of how my business model works.
Tell us a little bit about, early on, you not only traveled within the U.S. to meet wineries and winemakers and stuff, but also internationally. You went to different places, and now sourcing wines and different things can come from different countries. And how you've worked that to your advantage?
Well, the Wine Network is a network kind of like how doctors take care of their own, and people in the wine industry are gracious when you travel around the world, and they roll out the red carpet for you. So the first trip I took was to France, and it was in the early 1990s, I think 1992, and we started out in Paris and went to Joseph Drouhin Winery, which is in Burgundy. And I'll tell a little story about that. That's when wine periodicals were just becoming a big thing for people to make purchase decisions. Mm-hmm. And so the Wine Spectator was in its infancy, just starting to really become known. Robert Parker, the same thing. And so I was talking to Robert Drouhin, and I said, wine periodicals are becoming such a big thing in America. The wine ratings, people buying ratings. He said, how have you worked that into your business model? He says, it's an interesting question based on this. The first time I let Robert Parker come into my winery, I let him taste everything. And in Burgundy, you could have 3 barrels of something, very small, vineyard designated Pinot Noirs and Chardonnay. That's all they make in Burgundy. And he said he reviewed stuff and he just slammed a bunch of wines that I thought were very good. So I took time to analyze who he was and what his palate was all about. And from that point on, he only tasted what I knew he would review well. Mm. So that was an interesting thing I learned on that trip. And wine is such a subjective thing. There's no right or wrong answer. If you like red wine with ice cubes, God bless you. I wouldn't drink it that way. But, and if you like red wine with fish, okay. But to me, when you try and match wine and food, so my evolution of my palate was first when I started learning, I read a lot and I hung around people that knew more than me. And unfortunately, I killed a lot of brain cells in the cause of learning. So it's kind of a good thing that I can still sit here and talk the way I do in an eloquent way. But the next step was, kind of trying to verbalize what you were tasting in your mouth. Because it's easy to say that's good, but what are you tasting? What's the flavors? Put it into English. It's not easy to do. And then the final step for me was matching the right food with the right wine. And when you do that, it's like you're making love with the flavors in your mouth. And there's nothing more special than having the perfect wine with the perfect food, and how it makes something very special. And if you take it a step further, when you do fine dining, where you have a first course with one wine and a second course with another wine, and it's just, to me, it's fun. I mean, I light up when I talk about it.
For sure you do. What's interesting is I actually grew up in a predominantly Italian household, and we always had wine, or somebody may have even made it. Interesting enough, my palate's probably not a very sophisticated palate. Maybe I've burned them with some of the homemade wine. I don't know. But what's interesting is how you're talking about that and matching the foods and stuff like that. It's funny because I sometimes I don't tend to always listen to exactly what they were saying. I guess maybe I try to be a little bit more off the cuff with things. But what I like about it is you're talking about, it's making love in your mouth. And that's a typical thing that I grew up with. Is it was all about food. It's all about sitting down. It's all about sitting the family. How do you take that? Because your passion is there. How do you get that out to your clients? Like, how do you push that out? Is it through your websites? Is it just from meeting you? How do you push that out?
Well, one of the things we do is we do a lot of events. We're event driven. We do a lot of wine dinners. So when we do a wine dinner, I'll go to a restaurant. Say I use a restaurant in Lake Zurich called D&J Bistro, which is a French bistro. It's like a country bistro. And I'll go to them and I'll say, here's the wines I'm going to bring in for a dinner. Put together a 4 or 5 course meal around these wines. And then I'll talk about that at events like that. It's fun. People have a good time because we do a pre-dinner tasting before we do the wine the dinner itself with up to 12 wines. And then we'll do usually 7 wines with dinner. And people say, well, 19 wines, everybody's got to walk out. How do they drive home? But people learn how to be very respectful and drink within themselves, or they get, DD, or Uber's a beautiful thing in today's world. So, but the more you can do that. So one of the things that I don't know why I'm gifted with a good palate, but I am. But when I taste a wine, I will taste it for how I like it myself, and then I will say, okay, how did this wine taste this way? And I've got this group of customers that I know if I sell them this wine, or say I've got a wine that really meets what I know your palate's all about, I've got them forever. Because once I keep giving them wines that they like, and I'm very good about understanding my good customers' palates, and I keep them forever. And what happens is you end up developing personal relationships with them. Like Clay and I just went to a distillery this this past week in Vermont, and Carl Singer, who we went on his plane. That's how our relationship started. I started selling him wine, and pretty soon, he's got a phenomenal palate too, but pretty soon we're like, become best friends. And I have so many people that's happened with, which is one of the wonderful things being in business for 46 years, is all the people that I've met as customers and all the winemakers I've met all over the world that I still stay in touch with. I've been to Italy 11 times. I've been to France, I think 15 times, South Africa a couple of times, Australia, New Zealand. But I still have areas that I want to go to. I've never been to Argentina. I want to do that and get that. And I will. I'll get to those places.
I don't think you've been to Greece.
They don't make good wine, but I do go to Greece.
My father-in-law might be upset with that, but
yeah. I mean, there are a few good Greek wines, but overall, it's more table wine.
One thing, a lot of times having a wide network of people really helps. And you have a very wide network of people that you're friendly with over the years. Many of them are business owners. How have you managed to develop such a wide network? For instance, when we were in Vermont, we're talking with Cliff, who was a pretty good sized liquor store out in the Massachusetts, somewhere around Boston. I mean, that's kind of unusual unless maybe you're in a buying group, but also clients, a lot of your customers are business owners, many of them. How have you looked at that?
Well, I think first off, most people don't put enough importance in terms of personal relationships when you're a business person. And following through, you meet somebody, they give you a card, sending them a little note, sending them a text, email them, and keep the relationship alive, because it's not what you know, it's who you know that helps you to move forward in life. And I think most people don't put enough importance on that as business people. Some people are people and they remember names and everything. That's something I've had to work on, remembering names. I remember faces, but I meet thousands of people a year, sometimes, I've got over 100,000 people walk through my store here. So, but it's very important when it comes to wine, because I like really good wine. I've put the importance on people that I know have discretionary income that can spend money on wine. So, and most of those people have success in life one way or another. They're business people. Their families had multi-generational success, and I continue to have relationships with those people. And like I said, a lot of them grow into friendships. So you meet a ton of really, really interesting, successful, and smart human beings, and they're a lot of them are very philanthropic, and I get involved in some charities that because of that, and so. It's one of the things that I would say has helped me to be as successful as I can in all my businesses. And the International House is my passion business because I'm so passionate about wine. But I have gaming locations, and I've got real estate. I own cell tower. I'm negotiating right now to put a solar farm on a family farm up in Wisconsin. So I've been involved in all kinds of things. And Clay and I had a company together. It was a make-your-own tobacco company, of all things. And it was like, 3 6-ounce bags of tobacco and 3 empty boxes of filter tubes for $20 plus $6.95 shipping. So we had all these customer base that they were making cigarettes for 90 cents a pack. And we were up to 12,000 shipments a month until Mr. Obama came into office and raised our tax 2,400% on what we were selling. So that made that interesting. But, I've spent a lot of time with Clay. We're both really good business people. Our minds are very active, and it's fun to be around people that are smart and challenge you and you learn things from. And that's kind of, I think I'm in a roundabout way I'm answering the question.
Yeah. How is it, like, international sourcing been? Have your trips abroad helped you in some of the international sourcing that goes on, or is there no really connection there?
Well, because of the 3-tier system that I talked about earlier, you can buy wine directly from Europe or a country, and you have to clear it through the 3-tier system. So I think when I go on those trips, the benefit to me has been more of the knowledge that I learn and the relationships that I make. I do buy some wines sometimes directly, but my business model really is when the distributor needs to make a number and they're willing to sell below cost, and they'll sell to me below their cost because they know that I'm not going to mess their price points up. I'm way better ahead doing that than I am buying direct from anywhere around the world.
What about the 3-tier model is beginning to break down in some places? How do you view that? And is that a threat to your business? Is it not a threat?
Well, in the wine industry, let's say, for instance, so what the California wineries have started to do, and they've been doing it for a couple decades now, is they're working heavily for the direct-to-consumer business, DTC. Mm-hmm. And what they've done is they have certain wines that they sell through the 3-tier system, and those are the wines usually that are the ones that are the mass production wines, the ones with a lot more cases. And then what they've done is created smaller vineyard designate wines that are only sold through the winery. And whenever I meet or I see a small business winery owner now or a winemaker, I always ask them, so what percentage of your business are you doing direct to consumer? And a lot of them are up to 70%. So as that goes on, that cuts out the distributor, the retailer, everybody.
Right.
I mean, you're still gonna have to have some product that goes through the 3-tier system. So for instance, if you own a restaurant, you can't buy direct from the wineries, not legally at this point. And that's another thing that's so antiquated in the liquor and wine industry, is that you've got these 50 states with 50 different rules. And you've got the internet, which is such a huge presence in people's lives, and they haven't really done anything to try and, work through what needs to be done. For instance, sales tax. It's a total con job. I probably shouldn't say this, but I am. If you buy something across state lines, you as a consumer are supposed to, like living in Illinois, I'm supposed to tell the state of Illinois that I bought this online, and I'm going to pay you the sales tax for that. Right. And what percentage of America does that? Probably zero.
Being tax people, we know what that is.
Yeah.
It is near zero.
So really, everybody's broke. The states are broke. The federal government's broke. Why they haven't figured that out and just created a national sales tax or something so that everybody can do things? I mean, if you're Amazon, you have Nexus in every state, and you're charging sales tax for those states anyway. Yeah. But the smaller businesses aren't doing that.
Another problem that I personally have in buying wine, there's just like so many different brands, so many different types. Typically over the years, what I've said is, hey, Tom, here's $500. Give me a case or 2 or whatever that comes out to be of wine. And you've always given me like a really great selection. And I've, from that, learned like what wines and what kinds of wines that I might like. Mm-hmm. And there's been very few misses over the years. That's really helped me a lot in terms of developing an understanding and taste for wine. I'm wondering, like, do you see that going anywhere, or how do you view that kind of activity?
All right, so statistically, 9 out of 10 bottles are bought that day and consumed that night.
Wow.
So think about that, 90%. So 99 out of 100 are consumed within 30 days. So for me, I got that 1% of the wine drinking public that I'm selling expensive wine to, which is important to me, but everybody's important to me. Everybody's dollar is green, or the credit card slides and works, So, right. So you have to go through all of those things. But 90% of the wine in stores is consumed by females. And generally
or purchased by females.
Purchased by females. And probably, but, and I think probably, I don't know the exact statistic, but there's like an over-under where the female can buy up to a certain dollar amount per bottle, and then the husband gets involved. And I'm not trying to be sexist or whatever. I'm talking in a traditional relationship, but that's what I see and I've seen. And every household, there's probably somebody that's more the decision maker than the other. But I'm not going to go there. I've gone said enough. But the point is,
let me catch you here on this, or not catch you, help you a little bit on this.
Thank you.
I think in any in most relationships, there's like, when you get to a certain price point in anything, like if I'm going to go buy a banana or something for 30 cents, whatever that is, no spouse is going to question that, right? But you're going to go buy a $30,000 car, we're going to talk about this.
Right.
And I think that's probably what you're getting at also in liquor stores. Hey, if it's a $25 bottle of wine, it's no problem. But if you're buying a case for $500 or something like that, we might have a discussion.
Right. Okay. You're saying it better. And
I'm just trying to help
digging me out of the hole I put myself into. And it wasn't intentional. I'm just talking over the years.
Yeah. No.
So, God bless. I don't care who buys the wine. You know what I mean? But I think we've gone on so many tangents that I've taken. The original question was.
So it was about where you have sort of introduced me to a whole bunch of different wines. Where do you think that's going to go? And I think then it was also, that a lot of times it's the woman who comes in and buys the wine. It's like 80 or 90%, some very high percentage. Mm-hmm. And then, where is that going? Like, how do you market to that? And how do you...
Well,
I guess
I'm going to answer this question in a whole different. I'm going to go in a whole different vein right now.
Sure.
So, as the economy gets,
tighter,
more troublesome and money's tighter, people drink more, and most people have to trade down. So, 5-7 years ago, spirit business was kind of very small increases or declining. And now what's happened because of inflation is if somebody's on a fixed income with what they have to do, a bottle of vodka is 25.4 ounces. You get 25 1-ounce drinks. A bottle of wine, 5-ounce glass, 5 drinks. So the spirit business is really escalated. First, there was this huge interest in bourbon. Mm-hmm. 10 years ago, you couldn't give a bourbon bottle away. Pappy Van Winkle you could buy everywhere. Nobody wanted it, Now I'm selling bottles of bourbon for $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, and there's such an interest with people in terms of bourbon. Tequila's on fire as well. So those two things. It seems like every star's got a tequila,
Right. That's actually
so. And it started with George Clooney, where they sold, what was his tequila? I'm drawing a blank now, but for like $1 billion. And then everybody else, I want a piece of that pie, Right. So. But the spirit business has gone crazy, and I sell libation. I just don't sell. I'm passionate about wine, but I sell everything. So
libation, that's a big word. What does that mean?
You can go look in the dictionary.
Such a nice guy.
It's a very classy way to say cocktail.
Right. I sell wine, spirits, beer. Beer, on the other hand, beer is taking a hit. And it's primarily because
it's hard to get drunk on beer.
No, it's really because of pot.
Oh,
all the legal pot, and those are the people that were drinking beer.
Huh.
So the beer, like in Colorado, the beer business is down huge. And
I've heard like 30%.
Yeah.
And they're the beer hub of the country.
And then they make really decisions like Budweiser make. They make smart decisions, so that it helps a little bit more.
We'll pass over that for now.
But beer was on that craze with all the microbreweries for a while, and that slowed down tremendously. So that's what makes the challenge of being in business for 46 years is that the environment continues to change, and if you're not smart enough to read about what's going on and make those changes, you're not going to be in business for 46 years.
Mm-hmm. So, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, obviously you have this relationship here with Clay and you guys are friends, and he can call you up and say, hey, give me, here's $500, we'll get me some wine. Clearly you don't have the time to do that for everybody.
No, anybody wants to spend $500 on wine, I'll do it.
I'm assuming you have some employees at your business. Most of our listeners are trying to figure out how to keep employees engaged in the business and how to do that. Maybe some things that you kind of do with your employees. Is there in and out? Do you find some of the same frustrations other businesses?
Well, they get to drink wine all day.
Yeah, I think employment and finding good employees is the hardest thing about being a small business person right now, and probably even change. I've been employing people for all that time for 40 some years. I've seen thousands of people, have had relationships with thousands of people as an employer and a boss, and a lot of them you have friendships and you worry about them. People, they bring their families in 30 years later. Here's my kids, and that kind of stuff. But hiring good people is really hard. And I used to always look at how a union negotiates a deal on what they want to do. And their over under from all the reading I've done was like 60%. If they could get 60% of productivity in one day, they were happy with that. So I would always tell my key staff, and I've had a lot of people that have been with me a while. My dad taught me years ago that, if you have people that are good to you, employees that are good to you, you have to be good to them. And I do a lot of good things for my employees, and I really I cherish the fact that they've shown a commitment to me. A lot of them treat my business like it's their business, and I encourage them to do that, because if they do that, they're going to do a really good job for you. But I have to recognize that and take care of them, and I do that. So, but they can handle helping out, anybody. I've got several people on the floor that have been in the industry for years. One of the guys worked for Hess Collection for 30 years. Another guy was, he's super knowledgeable about Scotch and bourbon and worked on the distribution side. So I've got guys that have made lifelong commitments in the liquor and wine industry, and that helps to have the continuity and be able to do what I do.
So for you to essentially mass the essentially Clay's product that he's buying, the $500, I'm assuming you have a curated monthly wine subscription where, hey, I'm going to sign up. This is what I prefer for wines, and I'm going to get Tom's list of wines, maybe even shipped directly to my doorstep.
We ship to the states that we legally can ship to. And generally, I will do, if somebody says I need you to put something together, and we'll talk about what their palate's all about, and how many reds, how many whites, where do you want to be average price per bottle? Because some people, a $20 bottle is their limit. Other people, $50 bottle, or they want a combination of a variety of things. You do that, and that's what starts the relationship that I talked about earlier. And if you're able to offer customer service, and that's one of our key things, small businesses have to offer customer service in a different way than big box does. Mm-hmm. And that's what drives people to come back. You remember their names, and you develop relationships with them, and that's really important.
Yeah, I can't send an email to Costco and say, "Hey, here's $500. Ship me a case of wine, or send me a case of wine. I'll pick it up in a week."
Right.
It's not going to happen.
No. But in terms of the question, if you get on our email program, every week we have, between all the websites, we have about between 10 and 15 emails that go out a week, and we have different selections, and the prices are better than our normal pricing in the store, and that's how to develop the relationship starts. Mm-hmm. And it's very, during COVID, people drank, I would kid people, drank like fish on any day that ended in Y. And thank God they left the liquor stores open. I don't know what would have happened in households if they didn't, But we did so much business, but we delivered, and we do deliver to the Chicago area 1 day a week. You have a nominal delivery charge. But people would back up their SUV. They'd wave, the tailgate would go up, you'd load in 5 cases in the car, and you'd hit the button, and you'd wave at them going away, But so that's the thing, you have to acclimate to what's going on. And we did a really great job during COVID.
So you bought the business from your dad, Mike?
1990.
How did that go?
When you do business deals with family, and I know you did the same thing, Clay, because you bought your dad out. Mm-hmm. It can be very difficult, because I wanted to treat it arm's length, and my dad did not, And we came to an agreement about the price of the business and the inventory and all that thing. But as a business owner, they always tell you, small businesses probably make more money on the real estate that they own mm-hmm. than they do in the business when you sell the business.
Right.
And in the beginning, my dad refused to sell me the real estate. And it got to the point where it was very adversarial. And I almost walked away from the deal, which he was to the point where he wanted to retire, and I wanted to expand. And after I did buy him out, I made the business. I remodeled, made it twice as big. But I understand when you deal with family, it's like having family members work for you. And when you go into multi-generational, the father or the grandfather did one thing, and they always say the next generation, it has a hard time, living up to the same performance levels. So it is interesting working with family, and that's the dynamic that I had to go through. My dad and I got through it. He eventually sold me half the building in around 2000, so about 10 years later, and the other half in 2008. And I still have a small mortgage on it, but it would have been paid off. So thanks, Dad. But it is what it is. He's 93, still alive. He was such an influential part of my life. He was very smart in business, and he taught me so much. And he was, he mentored me for a lot of years and made me into the good businessman that I am. And even today, at 93, his brain is still very active. And I run things by him, and he's got so much great insight because he's had all those years of experience. And I'm sure your dad, I've met your dad so many times. I love your dad, Clay, but your dad's got to be the same way with you. Mm-hmm. And when you're younger, you let the good stuff go in and stay, and they'll say some stuff that you just kind of thank you and filters in and out. Yeah. But there's something to be said about experience, and talking to older people and learning from them is another thing that I would say has been part of my success in life.
If your daughter came along, she's
22.
Yeah, at that age where she could start thinking about what she's going to do in life. If she came to you and said, I'm interested in learning this business and eventually taking it over, buying it from you, whatever, how would you respond to that?
I would ask her why. And then I would talk to her about the challenges that she's going to have being an independent business person moving forward over the next 40 years. If that's what she really wanted to make as a career, I probably would try and talk her out of it, because I think that it's going to be harder and harder for small businesses to succeed on the level that the success you've had, I've had, as time goes on. I think it's going to be smaller and smaller niches. And I don't know when things are going to turn around where big box and internet is going to, everything goes in cycles. But how long is it going to take before people say, you know what, I'm tired of the homogenized selection. I'm tired of, some people like to go and touch something. They want to look at it. They want to feel it before they buy it. When you're online, you get none of that. So I don't know. It's interesting, but I don't think my business model is not going to be able to last forever. I'm shocked it's lasted this long. That's why I still own the business. If I saw it going south, I would have gotten out a while ago.
But you started earlier and you said one of your successes is that you've been able to evolve your business model. And so it doesn't shock me, actually, that you're still here because you've evolved it.
Right.
What would, of course, you don't know what it would take for her to evolve it. Everybody has to find that way on their own.
That's correct.
And it's hard.
It is hard. But I see what's going on with laws. Liquor industry is very regulated. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of what's going on. Distribution with the consolidation, I don't see that changing anytime soon. And they get just bigger and bigger. And like Southern Wine and Spirits, Southern Glacier Wine and Spirits in this industry is the biggest one. They're in 44 states. They'd be a Fortune 50 company if they were publicly traded. Mm-hmm. And they're making an ungodly amount of money right now. They have been through COVID. They did really well. I don't see that changing. And they want to stick it to the little guy. It's a lot easier for them in our industry to service Jewel Osco and Costco and Binny's than it is to service Tom Jiaras and Garfield's and all these smaller liquor stores, because it costs a lot of money to deliver, and you have to have a salesperson, all those things. So they don't want, Illinois, for instance, Chicago was, for years, 70% of the business was done in independents. If you go to California, 70% of the business is done in big box. So Diageo, which is one of the big conglomerates, they own wineries, liquor labels, breweries, everything. They made a conscious decision in Illinois, it's been about 25 years, that they were not going to honor small business groups anymore, buying groups or anything, because they want to put them out of business. And they have a 50-year plan to switch Illinois from being 70% independents to 30% independents, because it's just easier for them to do business. So I would explain that to my daughter. These are the things that you're going to have to overcome. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's going to be a lot harder chore to do what I've done for you, I think.
So one of the things you've also managed to do over the years is diversify, right? So not just liquor store, then there's restaurant, then there's tobacco, real estate, cell tower. You've named off some of these things earlier on. And it's actually, there's more things than you even listed. How do you think about which ones you want to get into, and how many different things can you keep in your mind at once?
Great question. I'm going to start first, and I'm going to say my father, our history is grocery business. My grandfather came off the boat from Greece, had a fruit market and had it during the Depression, and then it went from a fruit market to a small little corner grocery store to a bigger grocery store. So my father had the upbringing that somebody from the family always had to be in the business. Mm-hmm. And for the first 10, 12 years of being his partner before I bought him out, that was the acumen that all I knew. Mm-hmm. And I think I missed out on a lot of opportunities because I was so fixed on making sure everything was so perfect in retail operation. And that's all we had back then. And so you get thrown business opportunities to you all the time. I know you do, I do. And everybody, you have to realize in life that they put their personal needs first. Mm-hmm. And they will always do that. That's human nature. So if you're going to get in bed with somebody and become a partner with somebody, whether it's an active partner or a passive partner, kind of take time to understand who you're getting involved with. Look at what their history is. Look at what they've done in the past. And I've had some great investments, and I've had some that have gone south. And I had one that went into a lawsuit, which is very stressful. I learned a ton because I'd never had a lawsuit in business before. Thankfully, I came out almost unscathed. But, trusting the gut of people and trusting your gut about what people are like, and I think is super important. And people that are close to you also have an opinion. They can, the females that I've been involved with, I'm divorced, and I've had a couple long-term relationships. And the one that ended up in the lawsuit, that both the women said to me at different times, that guy's not a good guy. And it ended up being 100% correct. Mm-hmm. So
that's a sixth sense, so to speak.
A sixth sense. And it doesn't, I'm just saying, for me, it was the people I was involved with. It could be anybody that's close to you, and, trust the judgment, but look at actions. Actions speak louder than words, and look at the history of somebody and what they've done. But you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to get ahead either. And a lot of people are scared to use leverage. They don't want to borrow money, and doing it in a smart way gets you a lot quicker to where you want to be at the end of the day.
Taking chances can be hard, and sometimes, I've had similar type thing where people have advised me, cautious, move slowly. Are you sure? And sometimes I've asked myself, is this just negative language in my head, or is there really opportunity that we can uncover and make it happen? And it is, you never know all the facts. There's almost always something negative there that you don't know about in a deal. Otherwise, they'd be taking it all for themselves. That's they're going to put themselves first. So what is that negative what is that negative part that's so hard to uncover when you're looking at a deal? And it's,
well, if I knew that, I'd be have my own job.
I know. You'd be very wealthy if you could explain how to do that. But I'm just saying, that's part of the whole emotional part of any kind of deal you make. Is what is the negative part? What do I not know here that I should know? Well,
I think first of all, you should always be diversified. If you're not diversifying and doing a variety of things, you can't put all your money and your eggs in one basket. Caveat emptor is out there because it's telling you buyer beware, whether it's you're buying a car or you're going into business with somebody, because you just have to do your due diligence. Mm-hmm. Nothing's for sure, but to get ahead, you have to take risks. So it's what's the risk reward ratio? if I put in this amount, how much do I think I can get back? What's the odds? I've always learned when you look at a deal, look at it in the worst case scenario and work backwards. So what happens in the worst case scenario? Is it going to wipe me out? Then no, that's not a good deal. But how much am I willing to lose, and what's the upside of this deal? So I think if you look at your whole portfolio and what you do, some of it's got to be a little bit risky. I think as we get older, we do less of that. But when you're younger, 20, 25%, put it in some risky investments, but do your due diligence. But let there be the potential to have a really good return versus something where you're making 6, 7%, 5% on your money, and that's what's going to happen with this investment, so that you can get ahead.
So when you
did I answer the question?
Yeah. But I'm going to go. We'll peel the onion maybe one more.
Okay, go ahead.
One leaf or
layer
further. Thank you. Deeper. When you were saying like 50, how much of your net worth were you willing? I don't know if you thought about this way, but how much of your net worth were you willing to risk on a deal? Because over the years, it's been a continuum of investment opportunities over a long period of time.
I don't know if I could put that into a quantitative number, but I think as you get older, you get a little more conservative. I know you have. It's just human nature. Some people don't. Look at Colonel Sanders. He started everything, I think, at 68 years old or 69 years old. So
he was just playing chicken with life. So that's fine.
He was.
That's so bad.
Yeah, that is bad.
It only took us 46 minutes into this podcast.
We can always cut that out. We can cut that out.
I couldn't pass that one on.
That's a total Clay humor. That's total Clay humor. But life is about risk and gambles. Even Social Security. Should I get it when I'm 62? Maybe I should do it 60 and 60.
That's true.
The government. But the government they don't make it easy. You go on I just went on Medicare. All the different things you got to do to get on Medicare. Make it easy for everybody. It's like you invest in the stock market. That's gambling. Yeah. It's a legal gambling, but it's gambling. So these things go on in your life, whether you realize they're really going on, and it's part of its risk reward involved in what's going on. Right. So like Social Security, I'm going to wait till as long as I can, but I got to get to like 82 where I'm ahead of the game. If I die before 82, I made a bad decision. Right. But that's how I rolled the dice with that.
But you look at your parents and they're still alive.
Right. Yeah. But the average male, I think it's 76, 72.
Are you the average male?
I think it's 78. Yeah. I think it was either 78 and then it dropped after COVID. Yeah, or maybe it's still at 78 instead.
But then it's statistically, if you talk to somebody in the insurance industry, if you get over 80, you hit like 80 or something, then you probably live to almost 90.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but
that's what my dad keeps telling me.
Yeah.
So to kind of get back to Clay's original question about like, when do you know that you should, or is it the right deal, right? The intuition. I think the smartest thing to do is to be always willing to walk away from that deal. Because I think what happens is people get so far along in the deal process that they start seeing signs, but they have that sunk cost fallacy that hits them, and they just do it. They just go through the deal because they're already at the finish line.
Right. You have to know when a loss is a good loss.
And we've talked to two different people that have walked away from deals. One of them was a completed deal, and they walked away. And after having those conversations, I really walked away with a lot of respect about being able to make that decision, because that's such a hard thing to do. It's almost admitting failure, even if the deal's not done, you're at the finish line. That's kind of admitting failure. You've invested all this time and resources.
But in life, if you're going to worry about failure, you're never going to be successful, to maybe on a small level. But one of my business acumens I call D&B, different and better. And what that means to me is that I want to be different and better in my competition. And if I take it a step further, it means I'm always going to be proactive and never reactive. Because I think in business, when you become reactive, it's a slow death. So in doing that, you're going to make some failures. You're going to make some bad decisions. But the key thing is learn from them. And don't be afraid to stick your neck out again. So it's okay if you get in something and you're 70% into it and you're like, this just isn't right and whatever. Take your hit and get out. Don't stay and lose everything. 100%. And it's like if you're at the crap table or you're in Vegas and you're playing blackjack, you got to know when it's time to get up.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to do. Or you have you have a stock that hits really well and you're like, oh, it can go so much higher. Well, take part of it out and get your money out.
Yep.
So I don't make as much on the long haul, but be smart about it. But most people don't operate that way.
No.
Every time in the stock market, every time somebody's making money, somebody else is losing the exact same amount of money, and so people don't really think about it in those terms, but that's the reality.
Definitely.
So are there any investments where you've stayed in all the way to the finish line and then learned from that?
Yeah, the one with the lawsuit.
Yeah, the one with the lawsuit.
I don't want to go. It was a microfinance company.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
And one of the partners ended up being, a bad guy and being very disingenuous and did a lot of things that were illegal.
Right.
And along the way, I was smart enough to insulate myself so I didn't get sucked into the whole thing. So that was part of the decision. I wanted to get out, but I couldn't get out and desert my investors that I brought into the deal. So I got dragged all the way through. But yeah, at one point I was smart enough to say, this just isn't right.
Yep.
So
how would you avoid that one again? Would you listen to the two women in your life, or how?
I learned from that. Yeah, I would think a lot differently. I think.
And you can pull up your pants in the morning and still,
I don't know if I'd go that far, but yeah, I mean, life. You never stop learning in life.
Yeah.
And so that was a first time experience for me, and I learned from it. I won't make that mistake again.
Yeah.
I hope I don't. Anyway, but in the big picture, what happened is I figured a way to analyze the whole situation. And my father says I'm very good at this. I always tend to analyze the situation and figure the best course to take, whether it's something with success or something that's got hiccups, and then figure it out. And in this situation I did, and I turned some of the assets I was able to get turned over to me, which now are quite valuable. So I ended up aggravated. That's the thing. If you go through a lawsuit, you go through a divorce, it sucks so much energy out of you. It's not just the money, it's the energy that's taken from you and how that counteracts your productivity as a businessman and productivity as a human being in life. So those are all things that a lot of people have to go through, unfortunately, but you do.
Yeah, I look at that as that's your opportunity cost, right? Mm-hmm. Is, you lose that energy when you're having to invest energy in something that's failing or done or, not good.
One of the other things I have to say is that, I expect with all the things that I have going on to get 5 curveballs every day. And sometimes it's a curveball, sometimes it's a knuckleball, sometimes it's a knuckle curve, But I think part of part of my success is that I've learned to deal with adversity and make decisions and just move on from them and handle those on a daily basis, where some people, the things that I have to go through, they get destroyed. They just emotionally can't handle things. So I think you have to either learn or be realistic with yourself about what's good, what you can handle, what you can't handle. Because some people just can't handle things.
Do we have time for another question?
Yeah.
Are we running out of time?
No, we got a few more minutes.
Just no jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You're killing me over here.
Hey, this is going on the internet.
So
keep it clean, please.
Sometimes you work from home.
I do.
How do you balance that? You're in a business that has some cash. There's a cash register, right? Stuff like that. How do you balance your need for control with your need for being at home?
Okay. Or being able to travel
independent,
right,
and be gone for a week or two at a time or a month or whatever. Yes, that's a great question. Well, chains, big chains, they have 1,000 stores. How do they get by with not being in your business every day? They manage, they put checks and balances in place. They manage by percentages. I'm not saying I do all of that, but I do enough of that. I have a perpetual inventory, so I know what's missing at the end of the year, and I'm within very like respectable numbers where that comes. Cash, you put systems in place. The reality is, people use less and less cash. I mean, I sell lottery tickets. We have to get cash for lottery tickets, but there's less and less cash. I mean, the government wants to go to I don't even want to go there with what they want to do, but I'm not in favor of that. But you put checks and balances, and you put some trust into people that they're going to be honest. Do I think I have people that aren't nickel and diming me? Yeah, I just don't want them to be, whores and pigs. Right.
So how often do you check in? Like, do you have like some sort of like a daily checkout sheet or something that you look at, or how do you do that?
So first off, you and your business, your itinerary, everything is everybody can look at. I don't let anybody know where I'm going to be and what I'm going to do. I try not to. Okay. I want them to think, well, he could walk in at any time. And that's a small businessman, and that's what I think is to my as owning the business and having everything in play. That's what I try and do.
But there are times you're gone. I mean, when you go to France, they're not expecting you to walk in.
No, they're not. So that's why you have to put the checks and balances in place. And I have enough of those that I feel comfortable being able to do that. Now, when I talk to my 93-year-old father, who comes from the old school, he's like, you can't be gone. You're going again. You're on another vacation. Right. I go, I'm 65 years old. I've worked hard my whole life. I have to enjoy. And he goes, well, what if this happens? I go, what if? How's it going to change things? I mean, I don't think somebody's going to back up the truck and, 6 figures of inventory is going to be missing. If somebody's going to take a few bottles of wine home periodically, probably. I don't want them to do that, but
it's a small cost for the independence.
Cost, right. It is. So it's a trade-off. I'm willing to accept that. And I hope it's not happening, but I'm not naive either. But I'm willing to accept that for where I want to be in my life. And, the alternative is to sell the business so I can be there. But I'm not ready to do that yet. I still enjoy what I do.
But you have a perpetual inventory system, and you have a system for tracking your revenue. Yeah. There needs to be a correlation there.
And there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all ties together. I mean, it's not easy to keep those in place. A lot of effort goes into the time to do that, but I'm willing to, because of the fact that I'm not in a store every day like I used to be, or 6 days a week or 5 days a week.
And you have cameras, right?
Yeah, with cameras. Yep. But you can be, what are you going to do? Sit there and watch the camera all day long? Pretty soon you're like, wow, so you have to do that. I've got a couple other people that I pay a little bit of money to check in and look on the cameras periodically. And they'll tell me stuff here or there, but it's more of lack of productivity than it is of theft.
Yeah, I can see that.
So that's a conscious decision I've made, and I can go to bed every night feeling comfortable with it.
I think most business owners should think about that, right? Is being chained to your physical location of your business, is that worth, what's the downside of it, right? You said that earlier, right? What's the worst that could happen? Can I live with those results? And will that margin, whether I'm going to go on vacation, spend time with my family, or even go and learn more about the business, right? You went out and visited all these different countries and learned a lot about their wines, right? That's helping grow the business in another sense. Is there some opportunity costs that you're missing because you're watching, Joe key stuff into the register, because that control is more important to you than growing the business? So you have to think about it in all those different facets.
You do. And unfortunately, a lot of business, I'm sure you have clients, they buy a business and they're really, in order for the business to succeed, they have to be the person that's there 40 or 50 hours a week, and they can't afford another employee.
At least that's what they, in their mind.
In their mind, that's what
it
they
has
are.
to be.
So, but, and they have to learn you got to learn to let go of control. It's not easy to do if you're a controlling person. I was very controlling in my youth. And I've learned to put a lot of faith in employees. Like we just did the Richmond Wine Walk last weekend in Richmond, Illinois. And I put 2 of my managers in charge, and they would have a few reports with me on what's going on. And I was out of town. And they did a phenomenal job. It was super successful. 10 years ago, I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have let go of that control. So maybe that's me is that maturation on my part, or is that, changing my priorities, or whatever it is, it's working.
Huge.
So,
well, I think that sage piece of advice there is a good place for us to end the show today. Tom, if they want to join your email list, find your website, what's the best way to find you?
The website is www.for wine, like the drink, and then lovers, like 2people.com, so forwinelovers.com. My email address is tom@forwinelovers.com.
Social
do
media.
One of those things. Yeah, I mean, we've got Facebook and we've got several social media. You find us out there if you do a search. But love to add you to our email list. If you love wine and if you like to get a good deal, then don't get in touch with us.
All right. On that note, listeners,
thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks
no.
for
Yeah.
calling, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom.
Great insight, and we'll catch you next time. You have been listening to the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast. You can hear more real stories from real business owners about what it takes to make it in business by subscribing to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you like what you hear, leave a review and a 5-star rating. This podcast has been brought to you by Kaizen CPAs and Advisors, providing advisory and accounting services to help you grow your business. Learn more at kaizencpas.com.